This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. This is Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. And this is the first radio program from my new office. It was set up. You can see back, there's this thing here. And hanging from a stand is a globe. And what the globe represents is from my friend George Gammon. He says the economy is a little gondola hanging on this big hot air balloon. And as we all know, that hot air balloon is getting bigger every day. So this is my new home office. Got a little my flip chart here, my little globe. But anyway, I'm very happy to interview a great friend of ours. His name is Jay Martin. He puts on the fantastic VRIC, Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, VRIC. And I will be there speaking at it on January 29th and 30th in Vancouver, British Columbia. So we're talking today about why, if you don't have gold, and I mean physical gold or physical silver, you better start doing it now, because the US dollar, although Jay is Canadian, he can see sometimes clearer than Americans can how screwed up our dollar is. So Jay, welcome to the first initial program for my new office at the Rich Dad Radio Show.
I'm happy to be here, Robert. It's good to see you.
Good seeing you. So yesterday I panicked. Gold pushed 2,000 US. I don't know what it is in Canadian, in the loonie, but I think next stop is 5,000 for gold. Okay, and it may take another 5 years, but I think it, this here is a real gold coin. And the first one I ever bought was in 1972. I bought it in Hong Kong, and I paid $50 for this. And today it's $2,000 plus. And this also is a silver coin. This is real silver. I don't like fake money. And that's why this Vancouver Resource Investment Conference is important, because you come to hear about why, if you don't have gold, physical gold and silver, you should have some now. So welcome to the program, Jay.
I'm happy to be here, Robert. Looking forward to this.
How long have you been doing the VRIC?
The show itself is over 20 years at this point, 27 years, and I've been running it for the last 12 years. And so, as you know, the bulk of those 12 years have been a pretty bearish market for precious metals, and a couple of false starts along the way. And what I'm seeing today is what you're seeing. I think a lot of individuals are realizing they might be getting caught a bit flat-footed by having zero exposure to historic money. But I feel a bit of a mission, like I feel driven at this conference, Robert, honestly, to communicate the importance of that, especially to people in the West, because as you know, culturally in the West, we're sold this story that gold is a pet rock, that it delivers no yield, it has no value, etc. And we hear this from people like the Oracle of Omaha, for example, right? Gold's a pet rock. Whereas a lot of countries in the East, civilians are encouraged to buy gold jewelry, to store wealth in gold. And we're sold an opposite story in the West. And I think it's going to catch a lot of people flat-footed.
But also, the thing is, you are in the industry, and most Americans are not even close to the industry. Most Americans are into paper, like bonds and the dollar, US dollar.
Right.
But right now, what Jay knows is there's massive movements of gold and silver moving to China and India. What's going on with these massive movements of gold, and what do you think the Chinese and Indians are up to, and Russians?
Yeah. I think that the fragile trust that we've had globally for the last 40 years has been shattered. And I don't think it's going to be repaired in my lifetime. And so countries like China, it's in their best interest to prove to the world that they have a stable, trustworthy currency. And the best way to do that is to fill your vault with gold, right? Something that we haven't, again, done in the West. And if you want to take, for example, if you're China and you want to go to the Saudis and say, we want to pay for oil in Chinese currency, the first thing the Saudis are going to say is, why should we trust Chinese currency? And if you have a vault full of gold, there's a lot more supporting that statement. Now, we've seen central bank gold purchases accelerate to a rate faster than they have in 50 years. So that should raise your eyebrows. That's physical gold being taken off the market. That's a massive event. You got to ask why, but more importantly, you got to ask what happens next. This is a finite resource. And we're not only seeing central bank purchasing, we're seeing central bank repatriation, which is to say countries that historically were comfortable storing their gold in London or New York now want it within their borders. Germany is a great example. It's a country who's historically stored their gold in New York, because Europe, it's a crowded continent, many countries, many nations, tight borders. It always descends into war as a consequence. That's the history of Europe. So Germany was more comfortable storing their gold offshore. But now when there's an actual hot war occurring in Europe, they're more comfortable with their gold within their borders. That's very telling about how they're seeing the future right now. Lots of volatility.
So and what's going on with China? I mean, the reason China's, as you know, I started my first gold mine in China, and I took the company. It was called Mondoro Mining, and we took it public on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and we struck gold in China, in Dalian province. And I found out what counterparty risk means and country risk means. And that's what most people don't understand about gold and silver, where it's stored, where God created gold and silver are in some of the most dangerous countries who really don't like America. So here I am. This is back, I forget now when it was, and long time ago. I took the company public on the Toronto Stock Exchange, and about 2 years later, we struck gold in China. And the Chinese came over and said, thank you very much, and took it. So I want you to know that I was a billionaire for about a couple of years. And then the Chinese took my gold mine, and it was tough, I mean, so a thing called counterparty risk or country risk. So it does seem like gold and silver and many of our precious resources are not held on what I would call friendly soil. Any comments on that?
No, I think that counterparty risk from a country standpoint is going to increase dramatically, because if we're departing a world where there was some kind of a fragile, but there was trust, fragile or not, and we're no longer operating that way, we're into a scenario where it's more every country for themselves, right? You can't rely on allies you used to be able to rely on to protect supply chains, et cetera. We're in an energy crisis. We're in a food crisis, right? We're very much in an every man for himself scenario, globally speaking. And so if you've got valuable deposits of resources within your borders and you can't trust the allies you used to be able to trust to protect your supply chains, then what's in your best interest? It's to take those resources and take that value I mean, even if they're squandered, and usually they are when resources are nationalized, they're not effectively produced. But I think geopolitical risk is way more significant than it was even 5 years ago.
Yeah. So I ran out yesterday, picked up this gold coin. They come in these sleeves like this. And the reason was that gold pushed $2,000. And I went, I think it's beginning. So like Jay said it best, for the last 15 years, it's been a bear market. Nobody really wants gold or silver. They're happy with U.S. treasuries and paper dollars and paper stocks. But now when you look at that hot air balloon hanging over there, after 2008, they kept blowing the balloon bigger and bigger and bigger. And now that little gondola hanging below is the economy. And it's hanging out of this massive hot air balloon of fake money. So yesterday I went, oh my God, this is what I've been waiting for all these years. So I ran out and bought some. But I want to give a plug to this book here. This is called Who Stole My Pension? With myself, Ted Siddell, and myself wrote this book. And what happened in 2008, which caused the hot air balloon to be blown up, Ben Bernanke was our Fed chairman, Federal Reserve Bank chairman. They printed, when the economy collapsed in 2008, they called the Lehman Brothers moment. And Lehman Brothers went down. My prediction is we're going to call it the pension moment, because pensions all over the world are empty. And every time Jay Powell, our secretary, not secretary, but our head of the Federal Reserve Bank, pumps more money out there, the more dangerous it gets for people. And when they raise interest rates, the stock market comes down. So I'm saying this to all the baby boomers, the old guys my age. You know, if you're born between 1964 and 1950 something, that your pensions are gone. Your 401k is toast. And people are still saving dollars. And I think what's going to happen, Jay, is when when people find out their pensions are gone, this is all over the world. I think the Federal Reserve banks, the Bank of Canada, the Bank of England, they're going to have to start printing even more money to cover, to make sure the old guys, baby boomers, have some kind of money to retire. So that's why when I saw gold top 2,000, I said, I better get off my butt, because the first one I ever bought was $50. So what I paid $50 for back in 1972 is now worth $2,000. What does that projecting forward another 10 years mean? So all the old guys, the boomers, are scrambling around. Our Social Security is bankrupt. And I think, but the majority of baby boomers, my US baby boomers, are counting on Social Security, and it's bankrupt.
Yeah.
So as a Canadian looking down on the 48 or 50 states here, what do you see going on in the US economy? Because you see it from the same point of view I do, which is precious metal side. But would you trust the US dollar and the US stock market right now?
No, God, no, absolutely not. And if I were to make any projections about how the remainder of this decade will play out, it's how the first few years have played out. It's been this increased unpredictable chaos and volatile scenarios. And I think that party's honestly just getting started. And I'm not a doom and gloom guy. Like I'm long human ingenuity. I think that we're a very impressive species and we'll always find solutions, but there's going to be some very challenging years ahead. You know, your pension scenario is really interesting to me because I'm very curious how that's going to play out. It's like the ultimate example of how counterparty risk can go very, very poorly. When you put your trust, the trust of your retirement in somebody else's hands. What happens if they can't deliver on that? And yeah, Canada's in the same scenario. We'll print to try to solve that problem, right? To give our civilians something to retire on. But when you're dependent on somebody else to finance the balance of your life, that's a very, very uncertain situation. And right now, I'm sure the numbers are the same in Canada. I'm actually more familiar with the United States, but it's like 1/3 of people have zero savings they can retire on. Another third have extraordinarily limited that would require them to reduce the standard of their living in retirement. That's a lot of people. And that's going to be a lot of angry people because they were sold a story that now can't be delivered, right? And so, you look at all the expressions of civil unrest that have occurred over the last 3 years, it's just getting a bit more heated. And this is a really big one. This is a really significant one. I don't know how it's solved. It's terrifying to me. I'm glad that you brought it up. I feel really fortunate that I can maybe I can sort of see this coming right now. And I feel really fortunate that I guess at a young age was introduced to concepts like precious metals and personal sovereignty and a bit more of a libertarian mindset, because I think that is spreading right now. And it's really positive that it's spreading because people need to take control. It's very, very important.
So just to give an idea is that, again, I bought my first coin in 1972. I was a pilot in Vietnam and I had to fly behind enemy lines. The reason to fly behind enemy lines was at one time this gold mine was in US hands.
Right.
But the North Vietnamese army rolled south so fast that the mine was now in enemy hands. And Nixon had just taken $1 off the gold standard August 15, 1971. And I was pussyfooting around and said, I have time. I'll go buy some gold from this mine. And the next thing you know, the North Vietnamese army rolled south and this mine is now in enemy territory. So I thought if I flew behind enemy lines, I might get a discount from the gold dealer. And what she was a little tiny Vietnamese woman with red teeth. And I go walking up to her, and she wanted $50 for a piece of gold. And I said, 50. You're behind enemy lines. I'll give you 40. And she goes, spot. I said, what does spot mean? Do I have a spot on my shirt or something? Spot. And all of a sudden, this little Vietnamese woman educated me, and my lights went on. Gold and silver are God's money. They're put here on planet Earth. They're not manufactured out of trees called paper. And so this woman's yelling spot at me. And I realized at that moment why Nixon taking the dollar off the gold standard in 1971 was so important. It just blew the whole global economy into this bubble, which is that hot air balloon, little gondola hanging beneath it. And right now, I think the end is near. So that's why when we come back, we're going to be talking more about why I'm so excited. I love going to the VRIC, the Vancouver Resource Investor Conference, because I go there to learn. And you got thousands of people. You've sold more tickets this year than ever before. And the interest in precious metals is increasing because people can see that gondola is losing air right now. And my generation, we're the first generation with what we call a 401k. In Canada, it's called an RRSP. But basically, exactly as Jay says, you're putting your future retirement in the hands of somebody else. And our central banks are printing that. That's what just happened in England, right? They had to reverse and start printing again because their pensions were going broke. So this whole thing goes back to my generation. This who stole my pension is that my generation, boomer generation, is the first one that's dependent upon the stock market for their retirement. Up to then, if I worked for Ford Motor Company was in charge of my retirement. But what happened in 1974, corporate America and corporations all over the world, so we don't want to handle the retirement of old guys, the boomers. So we're going to put it in the hands of the boomer themselves. But the trouble was my generation has no financial education, neither does yours really either. And they started saving money. The government prints it. They save stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. And as every time they raise interest rates, the stock market crashes. So that's why when we come back, I'd like to have you discuss why I'm so excited about going to VRIC, on January 29th and 30th. What will you learn? Who will be there? If you're going to listen to me, you listen to me on Zoom. I don't want to listen to myself any longer. So I want to come and hear the other speakers and what they have to say, and hopefully scare the crap out of you because you'll take action. If you knew how close we are, instead of a Lehman Brothers moment, we're going to have a pension moment, which came out it started in 1974. All these pension stuff started to happen. Then you might want to attend the VRIC and get educated and talk to people who are really in the industry. So we come back, we'll be talking once again to Jay Martin. He's the president and CEO of Cambridge House, and he puts on the very prestigious Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, January 29th and 30th, which I will be attending. I will be speaking there also, but I don't go to listen to me. And so we come back, Jay, I want you to talk about who the speakers are, what people can expect to learn at an international gold conference. We'll be right back.
Robert's been warning us for years, time after time after time, his golden rule: invest in real assets. That's how he didn't just survive the last period of catastrophic inflation, he thrived, turning his first property into a real estate empire of over 7,000 units. But with history possibly repeating itself, real estate is being crushed under the thumb of the Fed, and we could be on the verge of another historic crash. Combined with rising inflation, the landing may be even harder than last time. But according to BlackRock CEO CEO, Larry Fink, the largest asset manager in the world, there's one real asset that investors need to know about. Because of its resilience during times like these, Fink even calls it the new gold. He's talking about fine art. It makes sense. The last time inflation was this high, fine art handedly outpaced inflation, appreciating an average 130%. Now, fine art can be part of your portfolio for a fraction of what billionaires like Fink pay. All thanks to Masterworks. It's the new tech platform that lets you invest in shares of paintings by Warhol, Picasso, and Banksy, and the results so far have been incredible. With 9 paintings sold, the last 3 returning 13, 17, and 21% net. No wonder over 600,000 users have invested more than $500 million on Masterworks. And here's the best part. You can skip their waitlist and try Masterworks for free by going to masterworks.art/richdad. That's masterworks.art/richdad. See important disclosures at masterworks.com/CD.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And today we have bad news for the boomers. Your pensions are toast. They're empty. And the reason is what was happening in the pensions was Wall Street was helping themselves. So people say, oh, I have a good Wall Street broker. I said, well, they're stealing from you. And this book proves it here. You know, my friends who became pilots for United Airlines, after we came back from Vietnam, they found out their pensions were looted also. So I have many classmates, this is very personal to me, that as they retired, they found out their pension was stolen. So instead of a Lehman Brothers moment, we're going to have a pension movement, but also throughout the world right now, interest rates are being raised, stock markets are crashing all over the world, and the baby boomer generation is now saying, how do I retire? But more important, it's not just the baby boomer, it's the children of the baby boomers. What happens when mommy and daddy cannot afford to support themselves anymore? Social Security America's gone. So Jay, what's going to be happening at the VRIC, and who are some of the speakers, and what can people expect to learn? I mean, I'm excited about going to learn more than hear myself talk.
Well, I'm excited to hear you talk, Robert. It's a super fun event. We have over 100 keynote speakers that'll take one of our 6 stages over the course of 2 days. And we try to start with some really important macro themes, and that's focusing on de-dollarization, de-globalization. Are we entering some kind of a new world order in terms of currencies and energy trade? And the speakers that we have, a lot of them are going to be familiar to you and your audience, individuals like Brent Johnson, Grant Williams, Mark Moss, Lynette Zhang. You've got over 100 keynote speakers that we fly in from all over the world. And we start with a lot of important macro themes that are going to drive the flow of capital. I mean, my job as a retail investor is to try to determine, where's the next avalanche of money going, right? And then I want to get there first, and getting myself in front of that avalanche is how you change your life, how you add a zero to your net worth. And, as we know, when the physical metal price starts to run, there's an extraordinary amount of torque to be found in the junior mining industry. And that's where you can consistently find those 5x to 20x returns if you're willing to do the work. And when I say do the work, I mean, come to the show and hear from the experts, individuals like yourself, like Rick Rule, like Frank Giustra, like Ross Beatty. They're all going to be on stage talking their book. I just tell them, I want to know where your money is. I don't care about opinions and forecasts. Tell me where you're putting your dough, because that's the ultimate truth teller. And so it's
the names you just mentioned, they're the rock stars of the precious metal industry.
That's correct.
Frank Giustra, I've never met him, but I've always wanted to meet him. I've interviewed Rick Rule, but boy, that guy's brilliant when it comes to the whole macro economy. See, most people are not macro, they're kind of stock market economy.
Correct.
But when you go precious metals, you go hardcore macro, because it sometimes includes oil, gold, silver, the hard tangible assets, copper, which is huge. as electric vehicles come online, and as a geopolitical risk, tensions, the war in Ukraine, the possible war with Taiwan and China, that means gold is flowing everywhere, except wouldn't you say that most Americans are sound asleep when it comes to gold and silver?
I would say that, and I would say the same for Canadians. For example, right behind my head here, you can see that it's a 100-ounce silver shell made by Silver Gold Bull. And when friends of mine come by and they see, you know, gold coins or silver coins and all sorts of metal, they're like, what's the purpose of this? Where's the yield? I don't understand it, right? And if I have a personal mission behind this event, it's to communicate that if you look back, I mean, you can't study history and not have an appreciation for the value of precious metals. You just can't do one without the other. And sure, maybe there's very few times within history that you actually need to own gold and silver, but during those moments, it's about the only thing you want to own when big things change. And so, yeah, and you know, in our trade show at the event, we'll have over 250 junior mining exploration companies, development companies, production companies in the metal sector.
And can I explain something? The reason
yeah,
I'm
please.
so familiar with Vancouver was I was one of those junior mining companies.
That's right. That's right.
And I was standing there in my little booth, and all of these sophisticated, you know, the hedge fund guys and all that were walking by, and I'm pushing my little mining deal. And then we actually did find gold, like I said, in China, and I took it public on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So for a brief moment, all I had in that deal was about $100,000, but the gold we found in China pushed me into the $1 billion mark. And so what every gold bug is doing, they're looking for that junior miner who's going to take them to the moon. So when you get to the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, you get to walk around and talk to all the guys like me who are pitching their deals. I found gold here, I found silver there, I found this here, I found that there. And I just want to give one good happy ending to my China fiasco, because I spent so much time in Vancouver hustling deals and hustling investors. I learned a lot about the gold business. And this year on July 8th, I took a gold mine public in Utah. But if I hadn't made all those mistakes in Vancouver, I would have known a great deal in Utah, and we found the richest gold mine in America. But because I was in Vancouver 10 years earlier. So you come to Vancouver more than just hit the triple, you know, the 10 times, the 20 times, the 30, that one junior mine that goes through the roof. You come for the education. And so I highly suggest people just go from booth to booth and get to as many of those mining companies as possible, as well as listen to the very senior speakers like Rick Rule and Justra to find out why you should be in gold. But that's why I'm very excited about attending a conference on January 29th and 30th. But I paid for it. I paid my dues hanging out in Vancouver.
and that's what people want to hear. I mean, that's why I throw this event. That's why people come to it, so they can hear those stories, right? And individuals like Ross Beatty, you know, he's delivered 14 companies that have generated a 10x return to his shareholders. I mean, these really are individuals who have been in the game for 40 plus years. In Rick Rule's case, he's been a vet for 40 plus years now. He reminds me every time he gets on stage that he's been in the junior mining industry longer than I've been alive. But, you know, as a consequence, he's got scar tissue, right? And you can hear those war stories from him. And Rick's the first to tell you that he would have had to work half as hard and made 10 times as much money if he knew now, if he, you know, knew when he started this business, what he knows now. And if he'd only invested in the same 4 to 6 entrepreneurs. And so, yeah, you know, it's very valuable when you come to a show like this to meet the CEOs who are going to be having that adventure with your cash. Like, can you trust this human being? It's hypercritical. That's why we put everybody in one room together. And, you know, there's one divergent theme that we're going to cover at this show. And I just want to mention it real quick because it's a bit of an outlier. But, you know, we've seen, I know most of your audience is American. This show's up in Vancouver, Canada. So I've got some Canadian specific content. And one theme specifically is we're seeing rise in the provinces of Canada who are opposing our federal leadership. And this is very significant because it would be like if a collection of states rose up collectively and put forward legislation to separate themselves from the decisions of federal leadership. And we're seeing that right now in Canada, which Canada rarely makes international headlines. We've made a bunch in the last 18, 24 months because of our federal leader. And now the provinces, the equivalent of states, have had enough. And starting with two right in the center, Alberta, which is like the Texas of Canada, it produces all the energy. And Saskatchewan, which is like the, I don't know, Dakota, like it produces all the food, right? Have both put forward legislation, one being the Saskatchewan First Act, the other being the Alberta Sovereignty Act, which are strictly geared to separate themselves and protect them from measures put forward from the federal government, giving them the power to deny federal decisions within their provincial borders. And the media in Canada is covering this, saying, nobody wants this, right? The public is scared of this. And then the legislation is put forward and it's voted in favor unanimously, bipartisan support within the provinces. So you tell me if people want this or not. And this is a battle that's brewing right now in Canada. And
so this is like, you're like leading the trucker strike.
It's a continuation ripple effect. Yes, exactly. It's the ripple effects of that uprising. And it's very real.
As an American, that to me is interesting because America, I ask you what do Canadians think of Americans? But what Americans think of Canadians are nice, happy, peaceful people. Then you guys lead this trucker strike, and now you're saying that your provinces are going to withdraw and secede. Like Montreal tried for years to secede.
That's right. That exactly in 1995, and they were remarkably close. They lost that secession vote by it was 49.8% or something ridiculous. And I don't know if we're headed to that exactly, like a true separatist movement, but the steps are being put in place. The legislation's being put forward, and it's being approved provincially. And so I've invited actually two former premiers to come and join me on stage. One is the former premier of Saskatchewan, where this legislation, the Saskatchewan First Act, was voted for unanimously, and his name's Brad Wall. Phenomenal gentleman, resource bull, I would say. And the other is Christy Clark, who's the former premier of British Columbia. And I would say she plays the opposite role when it comes to provincial politics. And so I'm excited to sit down and grill both of them in front of my audience, who's going to have lots of questions about the direction of our country and the provinces, because you have a country like Alberta laden with natural resources. Saskatchewan, the same, uranium, oil, gas, but they're landlocked. They don't have access to international ports, which is where a lot of their grief comes from, because our federal leadership has just stymied their ability to export the resources that used to make Canada wealthy, right? We've been a resource economy forever. That's why we came through the 2008 crisis richer than any other developed nation. And now we have the German chancellor arriving in Canada begging for natural gas, and our prime minister saying, I can't make a sound business case for that. It's like, well, we have it, they need it, let's do this. But instead we promise hydrogen power, of which we don't have any. It's ridiculous. It's this more, this virtue game that's going nowhere, but I'm excited to see how it plays out.
Yeah, so people will be able to, this is a historic event. This was like the trucker strike of not that long ago. But also it's going to be more business opportunities and investment opportunities for people who really want to get on what I call ground floor. Because I think it's kind of funny that, I played rugby against you guys, Canadians, all the time. And Canadians always go, C-A, N-A, D-A, most polite rugby players we knew. But now you guys are turning into these rebels, taking on your buddy Trudeau. I remember his father, Pierre Trudeau, oh my God, and his mother. But anyway, Canada is a very rich country. And for those of you who are interested in getting at what they call ground floor and all this, I would go to the VRIC, January 29th and 30th, to learn from some of the rebels up there who are going to make history, because Canada is an extremely rich country. And with electronic vehicles coming on to stay and all that, I attempted to start a copper mine also in outside of British Columbia. That was a tough job, but it's a tough business. And so that's why, if all of you who want to understand, one of the biggest revolutions going is in precious metals, but because we're going to have a pension crisis, Social Security crisis, stock market crisis. And if you're saving US dollars with a Canadian loonie, you're crazy, because they're going to start printing like crazy. That's what just happened in England, right? They had to start printing again, because if they stopped printing, their pensions would go broke in England. So all that did was make the value of the pound sterling worth less and less. So the same thing is going to happen in Canada. Same thing is happening in the US as we speak. And that's why that balloon with a gondola is hanging beneath of it. Is, you look at America is now 31 trillion in debt. After 1971, when Nixon took us off the gold standard, we didn't have that much debt. And now we're 31 trillion. If they push interest rates to 5%, that means the US taxpayer has to pay approximately 1.5 trillion in interest just on the US national debt. What is that going to do to the dollar? What is that going to do to the Canadian currency? And here we are, some of the richest two countries in the world, plus Mexico is extremely rich. But the average person has no idea about gold, silver, copper, lithium, all the resources that are required to run an economy. So Vancouver is going to be, I wish you had more time, because I couldn't get around to see all the other little junior miners out there. I'd be standing there in my little booth, talking about, I was pitching my China deal, and I was right. We took it public, but then the Chinese took it. So my next gold mine's in Utah. It's a little safer.
Smart move. Yeah.
So anyway, I congratulate you for putting it on. Anything else people can expect to learn by talking to little junior miners and listening to the big dogs like Rick Rule speak about what's happening in movements of gold throughout the world?
Yeah, that's it, Robert. Every name that I mentioned, plus 90 more, will be giving 20-minute keynote speeches all throughout the conference. In addition, we do full hour deep dives into as many commodities as I feel are relevant right now. We're going to be going super deep into the supply and demand economics of gold, of silver, of copper, of uranium. And because, as you mentioned, the base metals right now are probably poised to skyrocket as well. It doesn't matter which direction the energy trend goes, the infrastructure required, the steel alloys required are going to put massive demand on copper and nickel. So lots of conversations. There's so many macro threads occurring at once. Anybody who wants to come, there's tickets at cambridgehouse.com. It's up in Vancouver, British Columbia on January 29th and 30th. And it's super fun. The nice thing about these events is if you want to come and meet Rick Rule, you've seen him give speeches for 10 years and you want to meet him, just come. Once he's off the stage, he always makes time to connect with the audience. As does everybody else. I encourage that from our speakers. They're on the floor to connect, to answer questions, get photos, whatever people are looking for. But it's a community event. It's super fun.
Yeah. And what's that thing about the difference between miners and stock players? Like those Jim Rogers, who lives in, I think he lives in Singapore now.
Yeah.
He wrote the book Hot Commodities. And commodities are going to come on bigger than ever before. But every time I deal with stock guys, they think they're off in the wild blue yonder. The thing I like about commodity guys, they work with their hands. They're in the mines. I've been in deep down in the mine pits looking for gold and all that. So we're not as high and mighty and think we're better than everybody else as we do in the stock market. So anyway, again, didn't you say that you're selling twice as many tickets this year than last year?
Yes. And I don't say that boasting, Robert. It's like, it's a question to me. Why are twice as many people today interested in a junior mining or a resource investment conference than were 12 months ago? That speaks to the sentiment. And I can personally say I increased my physical gold holdings by 50% this year. And I'm not a novel thinker or a trendsetter. Typically when I'm doing something, yes, there's a wave of people doing it too, and so I pay attention to that.
Yeah, I think, when gold passed 2,000, I went, uh-oh, that's a lot. That's like when gold passed $50. It didn't stop. It didn't look backwards. And then it went to 800 and then pulled back. And then it went to 2, and now it's just, and it's about to take off again. In my opinion, I could be wrong.
Sure.
But given EVs, electronic vehicles, the pumping of fake money into the economy, the COVID thing, Canadian truckers going on strike, provinces going on strike, and Canada, Mexico, and US are extremely rich countries. And you come to the Vancouver Resource Investor Conference to meet the little guys who are digging around the world looking for some gold or silver, or oil or copper to get rich. So for those of you with a more adventurous spirit, Canada, Vancouver is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. And I love your beer, your Labatt's beer, and it's really a great place. But I learned so much in Vancouver because I was hanging out with thousands of entrepreneurs. I think everybody at Vancouver is an entrepreneur, and they're all pitching their deals. And I don't recommend doing any deal unless you check them out. But I learned more about how to pitch a deal, what people look for in a deal, what made a good miner, bad miner. But you come to learn. And so that's why I'm very happy to promote your show, the VRIC, January 29th and 30, Vancouver, British Columbia. Final words there, Jay. Final words.
I'm excited you're coming. We've got some amazing panels with you specifically, yourself and Mark Moss and a couple others. We'll be talking about the New World Order. So much fun content. I mean, honestly, it's my favorite 2 days of the year because I get to park myself on stage and grill individuals like you and try to get answers to my biggest questions. So yeah, you're right. It's, my first and foremost motivation is capital gains here, Robert. There's not many industries that can deliver those 5x, 20x returns if you're willing to do the work. And that's what this show is all about.
Yeah. And if you're an entrepreneur, this is your show. You come to listen to hundreds of other entrepreneurs pitching their deals in one space in 2 days. Anyway, congratulations on your success. I look forward to seeing you a few days in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Likewise.
So we come back with final words with Sarah on the Canadian VRIC and what she thinks about precious metals. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. I want to thank Jay Martin for being a guest on the show. I invited him on. He didn't ask me to promote his show. I'm promoting his show because if you think you're an entrepreneur and you want to strike it rich in the hottest sectors, not technology right now, it's actually precious metals and commodities. This is your show. And I learned so much about what it takes to be an entrepreneur in Vancouver. I call them all the Frito Banditos. They're Canadian, but everybody in Vancouver has got some deal they're working on. So I learned how to pitch deals, what made them good, what made them bad, and a lot of them were bad. But I had one of those. I took it public on Toronto Stock Exchange, my first company. We struck it, but then the Chinese took it, and that's priceless. But this year I got my revenge, and I took the Trixie mine public, which we found in Utah. So anyway, it's a good time. And this, you can tell you're pretty solid with the industry. This here is a silver bullet sent to me by Dana Samuelson out of Austin, Texas, because I buy so much gold and silver. He sent me a silver bullet. This is 2 ounces here. So Sarah, what did you think of the idea of Vancouver and resources? And
what I think is so cool is Jay's a young guy. And he's in what I think traditionally is considered an old man's field, resources and oil and uranium. I mean, for me personally, I always just think, that's old money. But really, seeing guys like Jay talk about it, like you're really capturing the importance of this investment vehicle, right? Rather than holding dollars or stocks or bonds,
right.
So I think it's super cool what he's doing, and he's put together a heck of a lineup. If you go to the website, cambridgehouse.com, you can see all of the speakers and the lineup. And of course, you're speaking. And I don't know. I think what he's doing is awesome for the next generation, the younger generation. We always talk about boomers and their pensions being gone, and this is a way for those, under 40 to get ahead of the game.
Yeah.
So they're not in their parents' position when they're 65.
Right. I was in my 30s when I started attending those conferences, just because it fascinated me. Because this is silver, and I call it God's metal because God put silver here. But this is gold. This is real gold, and God put it here. But up to now, everybody's been doing with paper and this and that, and flipping stocks and flipping real estate. I wanted to talk to the real hardcore entrepreneurs.
Yeah,
So
that's a good point, though. Is like paper and stocks. Paper seems easy, right? There's an easy barrier to entry. Try digging a hole in the ground and finding oil. So I think there's that barrier. But I think the more we talk about it, the more we educate. You're great at it. We've done several shows on gold and silver, especially with like Marin Katusa and resources. And I think you're doing great about educating about that piece that doesn't get talked about a lot.
Yeah, because gold and silver, this is gold, and this is silver. This is real money. And so that's why I was attracted to Vancouver. I spent years up there putzing around, learning from all these. I call them the Frito Banditos, because every one of them was always pitching a deal. And I learned more about entrepreneurship in Vancouver than I did in the States. So I want to thank you for putting this on, Sarah. For those of you, again, it's Jay Martin. He's the president and CEO of Cambridge House, Vancouver Resource Investment Conference, VRIC, January 29th and 30th. He didn't ask us to do this. I did this because for those of you who are really interested in becoming entrepreneurs, this is one aspect of you being an entrepreneur. So thank you all for listening to the Rich Dad Radio Show. And thank you, Sarah.